Hey everyone, this is Cindy and I'm going to share with you today a pattern I call Sunny Grid. And I'm also going to take this opportunity to share with you some drawing tips to help you with your pattern work. So let me get a couple of sheets of paper here. And you notice I'm outside. It's because our weather is beautiful here today. So this is a super simple grid pattern. You do a swirl, a line, swirl, and a line. And then we're going to make a couple of rotations of this one. So we're going to move down a little bit, and again, a swirl and a line, swirl and a line. And I know there's a lot of grid patterns out there that are similar to this, but I'm going to tell you I'm going to share some tips with you on how to take a simple pattern like this and really do something more with it. Now we'll have to do a line between each of our little swirlies here to finish off our grid. And then let's put a swirl right smack dab in the middle of each of those grid blocks also. And that makes our sunny grid pattern. So here's the first tip I want to share with you. If you want to take a basic pattern like this and make it really dainty, lightweight on your paper, here's what you could do. Consider using dots and dashes to allow for more white space in your pattern. So here you can see I'm using dots for the swirls and then dashes for the lines. Now if you don't want to switch to dots and dashes, you can still use solid lines, but just draw them with a pen that has a thinner tip on it, like the one I'm using here. And then the next tip on this one is to use light colors. I'm not going to share that with you today in the video because I don't have any out here, but that's certainly another thing you can do. Use translucent colors or light colors. Now I'm going to draw this pattern out again. And this time we're going to look at various things you can do to make the pattern heavier on your page. So one of the first things you can do is take each of your lines and turn them into a shape. And you change a line into a shape simply by closing it up. So in this case, I'm going to go ahead and do another line exactly the same as the first and attach it to the first line I did. So you can see here I'm just doing like a parallel of this little swirl and attaching it. And it changes it from just a line swirl to a shape. And I'll do that here with these lines too. And you can see already that this pattern is starting to look heavier on my page. Another tip for making your patterns look heavier is to simply add an element to your pattern. So here I'll just add a real simple box around each of these connecting swirlies. Oh, and something I forgot to mention when you're turning a line into a shape is that you don't have to always make that second line exactly like the first one. You can create a whole new shape, like you can see I did here by adding this bulb in the middle of my swirl. Okay, so let's switch to a thicker pen. Now, take your heavier pen tip and add an extra line on top of the lines you've already drawn, and that of course will make it look heavier. And if you want to give it a 3D look, then consider where your light source is coming from and use that thicker line to represent a shadow on the opposite side of your light source. And if you're not very good about figuring out light sources, just keep in mind that you want to keep your darker, your heavier lines, the shadow line, on only two sides of any element of your pattern. So like here I'm doing it on the right hand side and on the bottom. And that's it. I'm not doing it all the way around any of these shapes. So simply adding a thicker line on two sides of each of these little elements in this pattern, I've given it a dimensional look. So let's do that with our swirls here also. We'll go around on the right hand side and on the underneath side. And you can see it adds a shadow. You could do this with pencil also. Another tip, simply add a pattern inside the shapes of the pattern that you've already got going. Now your pattern, even if you didn't have to like make extra shapes, if it already had shapes in it, just consider filling in those shapes with another pattern. And my favorite pattern, as you've probably seen from my other videos, is simply repeated straight lines. So let's recap. If you want your pattern to be less noticeable and daintier on the page, here's a few things that you can do. Use broken lines and dots instead of solid lines, and then also consider a smaller tip pin and light colors. To make your pattern more noticeable and heavier, turn your lines into shapes, or use a thicker pin tip and create thick lines and shadows. Remember to determine where your light source is coming from, or simply follow the rule of creating thicker lines or shadows on only two sides of each pattern element. Also, you could add filler patterns or use bold, bright, or really deep, rich, dark colors. Okay, so I'm going to flip through one of my drawing sketchbooks here, and I've got a couple of samples I wanted to show you. Here you can see where I've put our pattern on an object. And here I use the pattern in a pencil sketch that is just an organic shape. And like any other grid pattern, you can draw it on a curve so that it has the same shape as your object also. Well, this is my topsy-turvy girl, and she's hanging upside down from one of my journal books, and I've used the pattern on her blouse. And I wanted the pattern to complement the picture rather than overpowering this young lady. So I used a fine tip pin and light translucent colors here. So it looks very nice and light. Okay, so I'll lay her here. She'll probably be glad to be right side up for a change. And here's another example for you to look at. I used some deeper colors and added a couple of dashes there to my pattern to give it a little bit more weight on this journal page that I did. I hope these tips were helpful for you today, and I'm going to share with you how I did this journal spread in my next video. So I hope you'll visit my YouTube channel again tomorrow. And until then, remember you can pick up a free worksheet for this pattern and many others over at therainbowelephant.com.